We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
Steven. I am very tired. I'm very goofy today, and I apologize for how goofy I'm going to be, Steven. This has nothing to do with you. Steven wonders about baffle walls. Don't we all? He has an 18-foot long, 8.5-foot wide, almost 8-foot, I guess, deep. Is that
tall?
No, wait. Tall. Okay. Wide length. Okay. I'm tired. Dedicated theater in his garage with his Q Acoustics 3020 mains and center behind an acoustically transparent screen with only an inch between the back of the speakers and the wall. And because these speakers are rear-ported, he's got some ports plugs in there, which I'm hoping came with the speakers.
Yeah, they do.
He has a mix of absorption and diffusion on his side walls, 4-inch thick absorption on the middle of his back wall, and some 2-inch absorption on his front corners. Measurements show that he has really uneven frequency response in the 100 hertz to 300 hertz range, and he'd like to clean it up if possible. Now, I guess we're seeing images at this point.
Yep. So he just took a screen grab of his graph. Now, he's saying very uneven. In real world, I mean, this is, it's
pretty good, dude.
it's a a 10 decibel swing, not
So
plus
5.
or minus.
It's 5 plus or minus.
Well, I mean, it's plus or minus maybe 6 or 7 because it's some
because of that one dip over at
one
300
little dip
hertz,
there.
right?
Yeah. But yeah, realistically, you're looking at plus or minus 6 or 7 dB from the overall average, which realistically in that region, in that frequency region, is actually not that bad.
You actually got a pretty good looking graph.
Yeah,
here.
it's a pretty flat graph.
I hate
if you smooth that at all,
because I was going to ask. This looks. Is it 1/12? It's
well,
1/12.
Maybe 1/12. Yeah,
that's what it looks like. There's a little 1/12 down there at the bottom there.
Okay.
So he asked, would the THX Procella style baffle wall solve his uneven response, and what other advantages or disadvantages are there to consider? So this is this other picture right here what it looks like behind the screen?
No, that's an example of the Procella.
Oh, the Procella is all these little weird ribs on the sides here? Is that what you're talking about?
I mean, that's not the baffle wall, but
Right.
So just to explain a baffle wall, this is a THX concept. If you're going to have a THX certified theater, you must use a baffle wall. But what it does is, in a way, it almost turns regular speakers into in-wall speakers.
Right.
Because you're supposed to use regular speakers, but you build a false wall that ends up being flush with the front face of your speakers.
Right.
Right, and the speakers are supposed to be sitting on shelves isolated within this false wall, but then you cover the entire front of that false wall with absorption. So that's the concept of the THX Baffle Wall. Now that's supposed to eliminate the diffraction from the sides of the speakers because they now have this baffle that extends. It's flush with them. But then because the entire thing is covered in absorption, it should get rid of any sort of reflection or crosstalk between your front channels. Plus, if there is any front to back reflection in your room, it'll absorb it all at the front of the room. So any sounds that come off the back wall and then go back to the front just disappear at the front, and they don't come back at you to smear the sound. So it's a perfectly fine concept. It's a way of ensuring that you get really sort of pinpoint sound from the front of your room, that you don't get any excess reflections from the front of your room. Could it help in this 100 to 300 hertz range? It could. It actually could. That's legit, although that could also be a floor or ceiling bounce in that range. Yeah. Plus it's in the crossover region of your speakers. So there's several things going on. But actually, even in that Procella guide and in his very next question is exactly what I would suggest.
All right. Well, let's just go.
Yeah.
I have to scroll down because I'm still looking at this graph. Because, dude, your bass looks so good.
Yeah, well, he mini DSP'd the heck out of that. So
that bass looks amazing, except for it dips right there at 80 hertz. It makes me want to say, why don't you change your crossover a little bit higher? To be honest with you, but it's so good. So yes, could simply adding more acoustic treatments be a viable solution instead? And that really is the simplest thing to do. And literally, if I were you, I would buy a couple of panels and just not attach them anywhere.
Yeah, get like the rock wool that has a fairly good sturdiness to itself.
Yeah.
It's all going behind a screen, so you don't have to make it look pretty.
Yeah.
I just sit some rock wool along your front wall because, the depth that you have for these speakers anyway, if you just get some 4-inch thick rock wool and just put it on your front wall and hide it behind your screen, I'm like, you're done. You don't need to construct an entire false wall to be flush with your speakers and then put absorption on top of that.
Yeah.
I just put the absorption on your front wall.
I mean, he might even need diffusion in this room, to be honest with you. I mean, at these frequencies, the diffusion's not really going to make that.
Yeah, I mean, diffusion
that much a
would
difference.
Normally like 2,500 hertz and up.
But he's got a ton of absorption already in here. He's got a lot of absorption. I mean, look,
you can almost never have too much in a small room when it comes to your bass and mid bass. So
that's true, but it might be sounding a little bit dead to him too. I mean, it could be. And
well, he did say those panels on his sidewall are actually a mix of absorption and diffusion. You can't see it because they're fabric
can't see because they're covered.
But
okay.
that's a mix. So he's got some diffusion in there. No, I mean, so yeah. First of all, congratulations because your frequency response already looks quite good. A lot of people
were the envy of all your friends, sir.
Exceedingly pleased with that. Just wouldn't need to do anything. But if you want to do something, so he was saying, what are some advantages and disadvantages? Well, the disadvantage of the baffle wall is cost. That's really the disadvantage. And because I think you can get a good amount of the results you're hoping for just with absorption, that's where I would go. And Procella, in their own guide, to their credit, mentioned that themselves. They're like, alternatives to the baffle wall. They're like, you could just put absorption on your front wall. It's like, well, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that's what I would do. I think, floor to ceiling, matching up directly with your speakers. Yeah, I don't think it's going to give you the amount of difference that you really want here. That's really, like Rob said, it's more for making this sort of pinpoint, very distinct channel sounds without any of these front, baffle reflections going on. I would just throw some more absorption behind that screen and see if that makes a difference. And since
because that's a pretty cheap and easy experiment, honestly.
Yeah. So yes, is it even possible to use his particular speakers with the baffle wall since they aren't intended to be mounted in or on wall? And the answer to that question, of course, is yes, because no matter where you put them, as long as you build the wall directly up to wherever their front baffle is, you're good to go.
Yep.
That's it. Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.